Hello and welcome to Access Paranormal. My name's Jamie Williams and joining me for the first time in the studio for the last couple of weeks, and it's Jonathan Sullivan. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, Jamie. How are you today?
I'm fine. Isn't it nice to be back in the same room? Because last week we had loads of issues with the phones and everything else.
Yeah.
And, well, we got there.
We got there. Some technical difficulties, but we got there.
It's all this COVID stuff, isn't it? It's just causing us so much trouble.
It really is.
I mean, I can't wait for it to finish so we can get out there and start doing some of these proper investigations and things like that. I mean, next week we're back in our usual studio, which will be fantastic.
Yeah.
We've had to go ahead and things like that because we're distancing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Social distancing, that's the word I was looking for. So we'll be back on there. Hey, we might be able to do a little mini invest as well.
You never know.
Is it one end of this building for you and one end of the building for me? Yeah, I'm like that, no.
Yeah. I'll be right behind you.
Well, I had to go and get a couple of mics today so we could get this recording tonight.
Well, yeah. You want to tell us what happened then, Jamie?
Yeah, I got the mics.
And
something else might have happened as well.
Go on, tell them what happened.
You snitch, yeah. I wasn't going to say anything, was I? But now you've gone and doing it.
I found it funny.
Sorry?
I found it funny.
Yeah, I didn't. What happened was I had to go down to Mill Street to get the mics and the headphones, because Jonathan was coming to the here to get it, to do the recording. And what happened was I thought I better do a building check. So I texted through to say, look, I'm going down to the barracks. I'll do a building check for everyone and make sure everything's okay. And he's come back, yeah, okay, no problem, Jamie. So I did, and I went upstairs, put my phone down.
Yeah.
Thought, right, I'll go down to the cellar, thinking I'd put my phone in my pocket. Went into the cellar, was checking everywhere around, with the lights on.
Yeah. Gets
to the very far end where the shooting range is and where the single room is, what I don't like going in, that room there.
Yeah, your favourite room, yeah.
Yeah, and I seen a bit of water on the floor and that. I thought, I better double check that the pump's working and everything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I checked everything. Everything was fine until I turned the light on.
And
I'm going to say the light. I'm talking about there's extra lights down in the building where we've got to turn them on to check. There's one as you're coming into the cellar.
Yeah.
And then there's one at the far end where you can check the shooting range area where the water is. And I turned that light on, and all the lights tripped.
Good stuff.
What? I had no torch.
Oh dear.
I had, which I thought was in my pocket, no phone.
Oh dear again.
It was dark apart from the little green lights. And I went, oh dear. As soon as I found out I didn't have my phone, I thought, oh my God. Oh dear God. This has never happened to me in the cellar before, and it's happened to me now. Of all the times I'm in the building on my own, that far end of the building, no lights, dark, apart from, like I said, the green lights, and I had to walk through the cellar on my own. Now, doesn't sound a lot, but that cellar is quite a creepy cellar, as we all know. We've spoken about it many times, and we've done many investigations there. So scuttled my way back as quickly as I could. I had to duck as well because obviously there's big girders, and I've banged my head a few times on that.
I was just about to say that, Jamie. Was it not you running down and going dunk dunk dunk?
Not this time, it wasn't. I was going, thank you for not coming out. Thank you. Yeah, we'll see you soon. Thank you for not scaring me. That's what I was doing, going down the cellar. So anyway, it gets to the stairs.
Yeah.
The stairs are great, aren't they? Because obviously it's the way out. You can go, hey, I'm on my way out. No.
Oh.
Them stairs, which are about, 10 or 12 steps going up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Felt like I was going up them forever. You're going up the stairs. You're thinking something's behind you. You're thinking, oh no, something's behind me and that. Then your mind gets even worse. There's gaps, as you know. It's like the banister's got gaps in it, isn't it?
Something's going to grab
If
you.
something's grabbed my foot now. And do you know what? All I was doing was making sure the cellar was okay.
Oh no. Do you not find though, Jamie? When you're in that situation.
Yeah.
Do you not find that you get quicker and quicker and quicker and more anxious and more anxious.
Yeah.
And then by the time you got to the top of the stairs, you're like,
Yeah, the door opened and I opened the door and I was going, thank you, bye, see you soon. And I'm actually talking to, I mean, it's nice to talk to them anyway, but I was going, but thank you, okay, look after the bill. Now, we'll be back soon, okay. I think we're back next week, so we'll see you next week. That's what I was doing. And then when I got up the stairs, it was gone dark. So... And then I realised I've got to go up the stairs, haven't I, for my phone. My phone's in the studio with the bags with the headphones and the mics in them. So I thought, oh no. So anyway, I got up the stairs, got my phone, put my phone in my pocket, got my carrier bag, shut the door, locked it, scuttled down the stairs as quickly as I could. And I was thinking, oh my God, I've got the whole hallway to go through now, haven't I? But what happened? I forgot I had my phone, I had the torch on it. So, yeah. That was my little bit of a saga for tonight, but hey ho, I made it home.
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
And Jonathan's snitching on me there. I wasn't going to say anything, but Jonathan's told you all now, so made me tell you all anyway.
I thought it'd be funny for the listeners to hear.
Yeah, it was I'm quite happy. I mean, I'd actually done the other week, didn't I? An investigation on my own. So,
I know.
But even that was playing on my mind when I was in the cellar. That was playing on my mind. I've done this. But yeah, I'm getting braver.
You are.
As a run.
Rather you than me.
Yeah. No, that's going to be next week.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I feel something coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be something coming out as well.
Yeah.
But we both were talking before we came on the air, weren't we, about the YouTube, because our YouTube channel's up and running now, which is fantastic. It's we're getting the viewers. We want more. We want more of you to go along and listen to the shows. The first 4 shows are on there now, but we're getting quicker and quicker. We're going to get more, as many as we can out there as soon as possible.
Yeah,
now,
we're going to catch up, haven't we?
Yeah. What's this one? Is it I think this is the 25th show, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
We only know that because we're doing we're trying to put them on YouTube. But anybody who wants to listen to them on YouTube, you can do. It's the full show, the radio show, and that's on. If you go on YouTube and type in Access Paranormal Radio Podcast, they will turn up. You can't miss them. It's got the big green logo. Superb it is. Yeah. I'm only saying that because we're doing it.
I know.
Well, you're not on the first 4, are you?
No.
I don't think you're on the first 10, are you? Yeah, so if you want to listen to the first 10, the brilliance from there on, it goes down with Jonathan. No, it's great fun.
I'll get you back, don't worry.
Yeah, you usually do, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
But we've been watching some stuff on YouTube, haven't we? One of them we've been watching is, strange enough, is one we've mentioned before, and that's Mindseed TV.
Yeah, Mindseed, yeah.
And I said to you, didn't I message you and said, put this Mindseed TV on, put this, what was it called?
It's called A Dark Christmas.
That's right, yeah. And it was as well, wasn't it? It was very good.
It was very interesting.
Yeah, well, I've got to say the footprints one, where you got the wet footprints. I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but that was quite interesting. That
it was, and we've had that before, Jamie.
We did, and again at Mill Street Barracks. I've got the photograph of that actually.
Yeah. So we have had that before. Something we've seen, so we can relate to that.
Oh yeah.
Also, I'd love to have that teddy bear.
You want a teddy bear?
I want the teddy bear that they've got.
Do you mean Mindseed's teddy bear? Yes. Yeah. It's just when you turn around and said I want a teddy bear. I mean, come on, you're nearly 80.
What? Hey, come on. I've got a teddy bear.
Have you?
Yeah.
A paranormal one for the paranormal?
No.
Oh dear.
That's my cuddly teddy bear.
Yeah, that's another radio show, Jonathan. We'll leave that one out for now. That's worrying about that.
The teddy bear they had was quite interesting. When they got the teddy bear, I could not seen them with that before.
No, so that's the first time I've seen that one.
It's sort of an Oculus type of device. It lights up as well. And they said it's built in with random words like an Oculus. I thought, no, it's just going to be another one of them.
Yeah.
But But it was coming out with actual sentences.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually coinciding with what they were saying as well, or what they were asking, and that was quite interesting.
It was really interesting. I thought that was really, really good.
But anybody who wants to watch it, I mean, I think they're about half an hour, the programme, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, if you want to watch that one, it's called A Dark Christmas, sorry. And that's on Mindseed TV.
Yeah,
now,
that's a good one.
I've been in contact with Sean Kennett of Dark Territory.
All right, yeah.
And they're coming back on the show very soon in February.
Oh, brilliant.
Yep. They'll be doing... I keep banging my head on the microphone, sorry. the bike stand. Yeah, so Sean Kennett and the team are coming to be doing an interview with them, all three of them this time.
Oh, brilliant.
And the last time I had it, I've repeated so many times, I'm not going to do it again because people get bored, but everything happened when I was talking to him,
Yeah.
And it'd be great to have them back, to interview them.
Yeah,
they're doing really well. The new series is coming up soon, and they're going to be testing some brand new equipment, some cameras and that. So it's going to be nice to to catch up with them. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So if anybody hasn't seen them, and that's Dark Territory, they're also on YouTube. Just type in Dark Territory or Dark Art, because one of the lads in Carl, he's part of Dark Territory, and he's got his channel as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, knock something here, sorry. And also, we've got Paranormal coming back on.
Can't wait for them.
No, they're really good. I like them.
Yeah.
I spoke to Johnny the other day, and he said, "Yep, we'll definitely come back on."
Brilliant.
And I said, "Fantastic." So what I'm going to do is try and organise a time for them, and we'll get them on, and we'll have an hour's chat with them.
Yeah,
because they're really interesting. And some of their stuff, I mean, we've been watching all their stuff. I mean,
it's been really good, hasn't it?
Yeah, and the last few have been good. And they've done that Nautica. We were talking about Nautica last week.
Oh, the Randonautica, yeah.
Randonautica, they've done it as well.
Yeah, they've been doing that, haven't they?
It's quite dark.
To do at the minute.
In fact, it was because of Paranormal, me and you said, when we can, we're going to get out and have a go at it.
Yeah, that's right.
One of us won't be coming back. Yeah.
I'll be back.
It was nice knowing you, John.
It was nice knowing you.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it before. If anybody else tries this, be very, very careful. Don't go on your own.
Unless your name's Jamie.
Yeah, thanks. Probably run away from me. Never mind me run away from them. I'll just tell them a few of my jokes. They'll leave me alone, and
that's it.
That'll work. But they've been good. And I've been watching some of I don't know whether you see it as well, Slapped Ham.
I've seen a little bit of that. A little bit.
He puts like a bundle together of unusual things. He might be, scary photographs. Yeah. It might be UFO. It's all different things, and some of his have been really good as well. So if anybody out there wants to watch them, Slapped Ham. They're the ones we've been watching at the moment, and to be honest with you, I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, it's been good.
I like them.
Content.
And a little bit later on in the show, we've also got Mike and Henri, his wife Henri, from you got me there, West Virginia. Or Virginia, and they'll be coming on. There's just over an hour with them because he was so interested in what he was saying about what happened. When we contacted them and asked them to do an interview and that, Mike actually started telling me a little bit of a story, and I went, "Well, Mike, don't tell me. We like to hear it when the listeners hear it. We'll hear it, but I mean, we are pre-recorded, so we were,
brilliant.
All we've done is we've put it on this show. It's going out there. We've not really listened to it properly apart from when we were interviewing him. But when you're interviewing him, you're concentrating on other things. You can't listen to it like you want to do it. So I'm looking forward to that interview as much as anybody else, because they were so enthusiastic about telling us stuff as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
That's what I liked about that.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah. And in the future as well, not long, next week or the week after, isn't it? I can't remember now. Next week, is it?
Go on.
You organised a group, paranormal group over Wisconsin, over in America.
Yeah.
They're coming on to do an interview with us, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah.
And the other one, I can't remember what it was called, so you organise that as well. So I mean, that's another one.
We've got quite a few coming up in the future.
It's great, isn't it?
It is.
I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
We want to try and get the the return of people as well, like Lynn Butterworth over Wepper Park. You know, because she's done interesting to talk to.
Yeah.
And some of the other paranormal groups from the UK.
From the UK, yeah.
We've had them from America. We've had them from Australia, Canada.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
It is, isn't it? It's really good, isn't it? It's the power of the internet, eh?
That's exactly what we want. Do you know what? I'm so clumsy tonight.
Social media.
Yeah.
What would we do without it?
Probably go out. Probably have a normal life.
Yeah.
Social media is just taking over everybody's lives at the moment, haven't they?
Nothing else to do, though, is there? Let's face it.
Not at the moment, there isn't, no. But there's one. I mean, who were they called? Paranormal. Oh, my. Do you know when you can't remember the name of something?
I know. Well, there's that many now as well.
Oh, there's too many. There's
quite a lot.
Yeah. And Zach Bagans.
Oh, yeah.
They go into this big hotel, aren't they? This place. And there's a mystery around a girl who went missing from there, and he found the body in one of the water tanks on the top of the building itself.
Oh, right, okay.
And it's never been solved. Well, they're going in there as the first people to go in there, and possibly the last. Yeah, unique. So I'm looking forward to. I keep seeing the adverts on the the channels there, and I'm thinking, oh, gotta watch that.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah, and I've watched a few paranormal stuff. I've watched Most Haunted.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sometimes good looking back on stuff you've seen.
Some of the early ones really good. When you think back to the early ones and how old it was.
Yeah.
It's really good. I
know, there's those for and those against and things like that.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, we all have our own taste, and I do really, I must admit, I do enjoy watching Most Haunted.
Yeah. I just think, as well, if it wasn't for Most Haunted, Paranormal would never be as big as it was, especially in the UK.
No, they got it to where it was. I fully agree with you there.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this before loads of times. Is in 1992 there was Ghost Watch.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it was Mike Hospital.
Like.
No.
Yeah.
You can dream.
That's right.
But no, that was a good one. Ghost Watch. If anybody's not watched it, please watch it. It's brilliant.
I vaguely remember.
Yeah, and I like listening to to the documentaries as well. What are out there? There's some good documentaries on Area 51, on Roswell, and things like that. I know we do the paranormal stuff, and if you think about it, the UFOs and that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's the unexplained. Yeah. I know we don't touch on to the UFOs in this because after this show on a Sunday night, there is somebody on who talks about UFOs. Yeah. So I don't want to step on other people's toes, and after this show, carry on, keep listening because there's another one after this, and that's on Access Northwest Radio. On a Sunday night, because when this is on a Sunday night between 8 and 10, that's when the UFO show comes on at 10 o'clock. So it's great. It's a great feed off from. Yeah. So we try and stick more to the paranormal kind of it, the ghost side of it, and let the experts talk about on their show. Not that we're experts. I mean, we're nowhere near experts. I mean, if we were experts, would we be running from cellars? Would we be running from? We go ghost hunting and try and do runners.
Do you know what though, Jamie? All these people that we speak to and we interview and everything, and they all say exactly the same thing.
They do, and you're right. Because when you say to them, you say, we're really scared, and But the ones tonight seem to, well, they did say, didn't he? Somewhere in the interview that they've gone to places they do not want to go to. Yes. And refuse places as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, I think that happens to us all.
It does, doesn't it? I think if you're going to get scared, your senses are up, your anxiety is up, and it's just a natural feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's only one person. There's only one person I know who doesn't get scared.
Yeah, well, so do I. Yeah.
Yeah, Marie.
Yeah, Marie.
Never ever gets scared.
Yeah.
I get scared in my own shadow. I mean, I've done.
The night she slept on the couch on the balcony.
Sorry.
She slept on that couch on the balcony
when we were doing the show.
We were doing the show, and
And
she
she
was
was
out there.
well away. Yeah.
Rather her than me,
I
because it
know,
wouldn't have been me, I tell you.
I'd have been sleeping in the room.
I'd have got in my car.
Well, yeah, I would as well. But sometimes you think, you think you're safe in your car, and really it's just a tin can, isn't it?
Yeah. Rather than that being a big building, though, Jamie.
Yeah. I remember when I went to Scotland in 2014 with my cousins and that. They slept in tents and I slept in the car, and I felt safer in the car, and I'm just thinking to myself, there's no difference really, is there?
It isn't.
But yeah, I mean, we've been talking also, Jonathan, about when we can get out is going outside to do some ghost hunts.
Well, yeah.
Because we all tend to, merge on houses. We all tend to merge on buildings and go inside. And yet, paranormal groups do go off into the woods, and they do go off, things like that. But it's not very often.
No. There's quite a few places where we can go to that are local.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and it's nice. I mean, I haven't heard them for a while. There's a couple of paranormal groups that are out there, and they do go off on the wander. They do go out into the woods and things like that. And it's nice. It's interesting. Sometimes I watch them. I got to admit, I don't watch them all the time because, I've got a life.
That's it, isn't it?
And you can't. I think some people think that we do this 24 hours a day, this paranormal stuff. No, we don't.
You can't, can you?
No. We've got other things, and to do. Football.
Well, this is it, isn't it?
Yeah. Food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thought trust you to bring food up, eh?
Yeah, food.
Yeah. Well, yeah. At least you can take food on you when you go on an invest, can't you? Well, I knew too. How many times? How many times does my belly rumble when I remember one. And I'll tell you this story. It was most haunted come to Mill Street.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember them coming? Yeah. And I was in a room. Well, we were in the cellar actually, and a vet was standing next to me and Colin, and they were all there, And the vet called out, and she was, if anybody there, blah blah blah. Yeah. And I had the loudest belly rumble. It went like that.
Might have known.
Well, she nearly died on the spot.
Done her scream.
Yeah. So that's my claim to fame. I frightened the living daylight out of a vet field by just belly rumbling. Then again, my belly rumbles frightened a few people, to be honest with you. We all know that.
I know.
Including myself.
I know.
Because well, have you ever done though when you're on a ghost hunt, your belly rumbles and you think, was that me or was it somebody else?
You do, don't you?
Yeah.
You do. Because I think because it's dark and it's so silent, and you think, was it me?
Yeah.
Was it them? I don't know.
Yeah. And I remember, we might as well talk about bodily functions. And
go on.
Do you ever remember the time we went into the cellar and we had someone who was well known with us? We can't name names. And there was a bit of a noise or something next to you. Really? And he leaned over to me and he went, and he leaned over and he went, Jamie. I said, what? He went, I've just farted. I said, I know, we all heard you. Because he thought because it was like pitch black.
And no one.
There was no one. Nobody could hear him. And I'd never laughed so much in that one. But yet, these are the funny things of the paranormal, really, isn't it? I love all that.
The years,
yeah.
Oh dear.
Laughs, cries, everything. Arguments, the lot. Falls.
Slides down hills.
Yeah. I mean, the people who fell down hills are.
Go on.
Is it Gwyrach Castle or whatever it's called? Fantastic place. Love the place. Yeah. Marie slipped down the hill there.
Mm-hmm.
Wepper Park.
A few people.
Bill slid down there. I remember grabbing him by the rucksack. I said rucksack. and then by the time he got to the bottom, he was lovely and sparkly clean at the front, and at the back he had like a big mud patch all the way down his back. So that was Bill.
Lee and
Leanne, they've done it, haven't they? They went in the Wepper Park as well, yeah. Should change it to Slipper Park.
I know.
Yeah, we've had some good laughs on them ones and frightened each other.
Yeah, come on, I'm waiting for this.
Which one? Do you mean the one that's in Northwich?
Yeah.
Yeah, where Jonathan, you If you've ever been to Northwich, the Plaza in Northwich, it's fantastic. It's a place I can't wait to go back to as soon as we can. And what happened there is we were doing a ghost hunt. We were all on the stage, and we'd done the investigations and everything was going. You know, we were having a great time. We decided to go and have a break. So people with brains decided to go through the door, and those that didn't decided to climb off the stage. Jonathan. And we were talking away, and the next minute, boom, 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 bang. And I went, what was that? We turned round, and there's Jonathan sprawled across the floor. And it looked like, you know, if there's a body, you can put the chalk mark around it. That was Jonathan. And I went, what have you just done? He said, I thought the stage was a bit lower than what it was.
It wasn't only that, you know, like when you're sitting on a wall.
Yeah.
And you've got the wall to put your feet on so you can jump off.
Yeah.
Well, the stage wasn't quite like that. Because there was a big gap. So
you had to be there.
The wall of the stage was actually like 2 or 3 foot in.
Yeah. And we've never let you forget it, have we? And I think the favourite one was we went to
in the
Bake Up Theatre. And
John,
yeah. And where I work, we do work in a site, so we have all the rigging and everything else, you know, to teach you to climb up up buildings and God knows what else. And what we've done is we brought one along with us, the full outfit. And we decided to let John Dagger, didn't we, in our group, do the tour. And I sat there and put me recorder on, I've got to film this. And he was saying about, you know, you've got to be safe, you've got to do this, and, you know, you've got to be careful. And he decided to get all the rigging out and get Jonathan. And he said, right, Jonathan, so this is the rigging, what you've got to wear. And you didn't even know, did you, what we were doing?
No, nothing about it.
Yeah, we were all doubled up laughing.
Yeah,
but you know what?
Proper there.
Yeah, you refused to wear it though, didn't you?
Yeah.
Completely refused to wear it. But do you know what? I thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah, we've had some good laughs. I mean, we're having a bit of a relaxation tonight before we go on to our interview we've done. And we've been to some fantastic places, haven't we? We've been, you know, I'm just saying fantastic place. I can't remember one, yeah. Nor can you. I've been to the Ancient Ramen.
No, seriously, I've not
you
been
haven't done that. That's a fabulous place. That
I
one.
want to go there.
Morecambe Winter Gardens.
I've been.
That's
there,
great. That
Morecambe's
I haven't done that for a long couple of years since I last done that.
Yeah, a long time. Well, I done. Many years ago, Blackpool Tower.
Oh, you done that with Chris. Yeah, you went there. You and Bill went, didn't you?
It ended up just me.
Was it just you in the end?
Yeah. Bill never went. I can't remember why now. Yeah, just went on my own. Yeah.
Was it an invest or were you just breaking in?
No, it was an actual invest.
Was it? What was the name of the group? Because they don't. They were really nice people as well, weren't they?
Lovely people.
Yeah. I can't think.
No, but it wasn't his invest.
No, wasn't it?
No. Do you know who it was?
No.
Jenny Bryant.
Oh,
lady who does Most Haunted.
She does Most Haunted now. Yeah, she's nice. I like her.
Yeah,
I've met her a couple of times. Yeah. I've not seen it, but Jenny, if you listen to this, hi.
Most Haunted experiences.
Yeah.
It was good in there though. We went into the cellars.
Yeah.
But very noisy though.
Yeah.
And there was tunnels going off. We were told not to. Every room that you went into, you had to be with one of the staff.
Yeah.
It was one of them places. Because there's tunnels underneath that go off in different directions. You could get lost.
Right.
I'd
let you go and have a look at them, John.
Well, I wanted to.
Did you?
Yeah, well,
you'd have got lost.
I would.
You're like me, you'd have got lost.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have been the longest paranormal investigation in history.
Oh, I know, yeah. We'd done the ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
We'd done the nightclub.
Wow.
There.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I've never done there.
Yeah, it was good. Really, very, very interesting. Quite a few places in Blackpool though. We've never ever done done
don't
anything
really
up
move
there.
that way, do we? We should start trying to expand out a bit more.
Yeah.
I think after this lockdown, I think we want to get out more.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, I want to get into Wales and do some stuff in Wales, especially on Anglesey.
Yeah.
Because you don't hear much on Anglesey. Now, there's a woman over there who is a writer called Bunty Austin.
Oh,
And she's written 3 or 4 books. I've got them.
yeah.
And it's all the ghosts of Anglesey. And they're the best books I've ever read on paranormal.
Oh, right, okay.
When you read them, you feel as if you're with her
Yeah,
on the investigations. You know, you get so involved in it that you feel as if you're there with her as she's telling the story.
Oh, good.
And you feel as if you know her.
Yeah.
And I became a great fan of hers.
Oh, brilliant.
And once I'd read the first book, and the next time I went to Anglesey, I bought the next book.
Yeah.
And so I ended up buying them all. You know, I've got them all there.
Oh, brilliant.
And love them, absolutely love them. You know, and some of them I identified when he was saying, because there was one where we were in Point Linus, fishing in Point Linus.
Yeah.
And we saw this light coming towards us, and me and my mate Phil at the time thought, oh, we shouldn't be on here, so we put our rods down, lay on the deck of the pier and that, and waiting for this, and the light never came.
Oh,
and in her book, she'd tell you the story about the Watchman with the light.
Right, okay.
Now, whether that's what we saw, I don't know, but when I read it, it's, oh my word, that's something we really did experience, you know. We'll talk about that another time, though, because
it's good when you can relate to places.
Well, we told you about the hotel. The hotel we stayed there, me and Marie, and you know, we wanted to get back into there and do the investigation, and then COVID come along and spoiled that for us. Yeah, but we're going to go across soon, Jonathan, to the interview we're done with Mike and Henry over in, where was it?
In West Virginia.
West Virginia, that's it. I'm getting so mixed up because we've done a few in America now. So they were in West Virginia, but they also lived in Ohio.
Yeah, originally from Ohio.
Yeah, and there was the house where they lived in Ohio, which they lived for 14 years.
Yeah.
Which was the one. So what we'll do in a second, we'll go over to them, and they can the listeners can have I think it's about an hour, this interview.
It is.
And the reason why it was an hour is because it was so good and so interesting, and the way they bounced off each other and telling the stories was superb. So do you know what? Instead of me blabbing on, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go across to them. So, Mike, if you're there, can you let us know you're there, please?
Yes, and Henry's here also with me.
Hi there.
Hi, Henry. Nice to hear you. So, Mike, before we go into the experience you've had, could you tell us a little bit of history about yourself and Henry and how this came about the paranormal experiences that you've been having?
Well, I'll let Henry start and tell a little bit about her early days or her childhood and where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm from Ohio too, and I grew up in southwestern Ohio. And so Mike and I both are from small towns in the southwestern Ohio area. When I was growing up, I didn't have anything that I would describe as too remarkable from a paranormal type of experience. But I know that certainly Mike had a lot of interesting things that happened to him when he was a little boy growing up. And then, of course, after we married and moved into this house in Ohio, we certainly had a lot of experiences together that I can only describe as paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, Mike, you could talk a little bit about where you grew up and some of the experiences you had.
Yeah, I guess that probably for me, the paranormal happening started in a little town called Pleasant Hill.
Yeah.
And just a bucolic little town, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people. It's an area where the interstate highways had left behind, and to get there, you had to want to go there. And that's really in a home. We lived in a home that was built in 1850 or so. So it's like pre-Civil War, old brick federal home. And that is where, for me, the paranormal happenings all began.
Right. And were you only a child when this started to happen, Mike, or was it, as you become a teenager, more of an adult kind of, way?
Well, for me, my very first experience happened. I was probably about 4 years old, and my bedroom was right next to my parents' bedroom, and I was lying in bed, and I had a window where you could have some light, even at night, would come through. Even starlight would come through the window, and I remember that there was like a shadow that was like a human form that was over the top of me, very dark, very black. And I remember I was frightened, and I started crying out for my parents. And as soon as I started crying out for my parents, the light came on. And my mother came running into the room. My dad came running into the room. And there was some discussion about how the light came on, because in this old house, the only light bulb in the upstairs bedrooms, there were pretty low ceilings, was on a light bulb in the center room on a string. And at 4 years old, even standing on my bed, it wasn't possible for me to turn this light on. And I remember my mom and dad having a conversation, and my dad saying, well, he had to turn it on somehow. My mom saying there's no way. And that really, for me, and that home in Pleasant Hill was kind of the start of anything paranormal with me.
Right. And Henry, how old were you when you started? When you started to get your paranormal experiences, how old were you at the time?
Well, when I was a child, I had very limited type of experiences. Although I can recall a time when I was like in first or second grade. I was lying in bed. I wasn't asleep yet, but it was dark in the room. And so I looked up, and this very dark shadow, like it was completely black shadow of a man, floated down from the ceiling. And it was a very distinct outline of a man with a cap on. And he just stood at the side of my bed. And of course I was terrified. And so I'd start crying, and my mother came in, and of course, it disappeared when my mother walked into the room. But I was so frightened that I couldn't sleep in bed anymore. So she took me back to bed with she and my father. And I can remember lying in bed in between my parents and looking up and still seeing that shadow. It floated down from the ceiling and stood by the bed. And so that happened for several nights. And thankfully, it didn't happen again. But later on, as an adult, I was working in this large building in Ohio. It had been an old warehouse that had been renovated and turned into an office building. And I was standing at my desk and looking at something on my desk. And I looked up, and in the doorway, I saw what I described. I've heard them called shadow men. It was a shadow man. And instead of this one being so dark, truly like a shadow that's black, this one was a very warm brown color, completely brown. The shape was the person was wearing a fedora hat. They had on an overcoat, but there were no distinctive features. Everything was like dark brown and muted, and there were no hands and no feet. And I'm in an office, and I'm thinking, the reason I lifted my head up was that I thought somebody who was standing in the doorway, and indeed it was a shadow person. And I looked, I blinked, it was still there. I kind of looked around and then looked back, and it was gone. Wow. But I most clearly and distinctly saw that. And so it started with the shadow person at a very young age, like I said, about first or second grade. And then I had this other experience, but of course, most everything kind of started really after Mike and I met and married.
Right. So do you think the shadow man, what you saw, and the experiences what Mike have seen, do you think that they've actually been like attached to you, from a younger age? And obviously when you've got together, it all escalated from there.
I don't know so much whether anything is attached, so to speak. And I'll share another story with you in the with that happened in the house in Pleasant Hill.
Yeah.
my dad had bought a baseball glove and a new ball for me, and immediately you gather your friends up and you start playing ball. You play ball all day. I mean, it's just the way things were back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I get called into dinner, and I realized that I'd lost my ball. I couldn't find it. And, it's getting almost dark. And so went and had dinner, and I begged my mom, let me to go back out and find my ball. And she said, no, it's too dark. You won't be able to find it. But she said, and now she's taking me to bed, putting me to bed for the night. And I'm probably now this happened about a year after that first story.
Yeah.
And so she told me to say a prayer to Jesus. And I had a relationship because my mother was such a devout Catholic, but we didn't go to church on a regular basis. I wasn't sure exactly what was involved with all that, but I figured if I could pray to Jesus and he'd help me find my ball, then I was going to say that prayer. Well, that night I had the most vivid dream, and even now, 60-some years later, I still recall the dream like it happened last night.
Wow.
And what that dream was, it was a man's arm. I saw this dream of a man's arm that was in a robe, and he walked up to this rhubarb patch that we had at the back of our yard, and this hand pulled open this rhubarb patch and revealed, I just saw this ball there in the patch. And then I woke up from the dream, and that next morning I ran downstairs. My mom was up. She was making breakfast, and I ran past her, and I'm throwing my shorts on, kind of hopping my way through the kitchen. She said, well, where do you think you're going? And I said, well, Jesus showed me where that ball was. And so I ran out to that rhubarb patch and pulled it back just like I saw it in the dream. And there was the ball, just exactly like I saw it in the dream. I went running back into the house, ball in hand, and my mom said, tell me about your dream. And so I described to her in great detail, and she just fell to her knees sobbing. And I can remember for many years I didn't realize. I thought she was just happy I had found my ball, but I think what it really did was just reaffirm her faith. And
yeah. And yourself, I mean, how did you think, obviously it was in a dream, and it's very hard to comprehend that someone can come to you in your dream and tell you where, you've lost the ball, and you go there and there it is. You found it. I've had similar things, not like that, where I've dreamt something and then I've gone and done it and I've found something. Can't remember exactly what it was, but I know it was in my mum's house, and I lost something in the garden, and I had that dream. A similar kind of thing to you. Somebody said, "Oh, have a look under this. Oh, have a look there." When I went out, there it was. But when you're a kid, I can't remember exactly. I was a little kid then. But it's strange how they can come to you in your dreams and tell you the stories, or tell you where things are. So, it's one of those you can tell people, but it's very, very hard to explain why. And Henry, when you and Mike got together, you obviously lived in Ohio then, and you moved into this house, which we'll be going on to in a second. Now, this house, you've had so many things, so many experiences in it. What kind, when you moved into there, did you know that the house was going to be haunted, or did it just?
If I can, if you don't mind, if I can back up just a little bit.
Yeah, of course you can, Mike. No problem.
To get you to see that from our first occurrences that were somewhat paranormal.
Yeah.
And then we actually moved into another house in Southwest Ohio.
Right.
Before we moved into this haunted house, and we had the beginnings of some very strange things that even happened in really was our first house together.
Got you right.
And I'll let Henry talk about, like, we saw light flashes and beams of light. We heard rumbling sounds in the house. And then when she gets done, I'll share a story with you about a tornado that we lived through.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the house that we lived in Jamestown, it was part of what is known as the Shawnee Native American territory. In fact, where we lived in southwestern Ohio was populated in the early days by the Shawnee. And so it was called, they actually called our area where we lived the land of the double wind. And they called it that because of all of the horrific tornadoes that would come through there. It was also had a lot of kind of limestone in the area. And, I know in some places they think that might lead to some kind of paranormal activity. I don't know. But the house definitely had some oddities to it, or the land, I would think, actually really had more oddities to it than the house. But you could hear this low rumbling. It was like almost perpetual, like a low rumbling. And this was like out in a very rural location. There was no manufacturing. There wasn't any airport nearby. It was just, we just heard this low rumbling that seemed to emanate from below the ground.
Yeah, we would lay there at night, and as your head hits the pillow, and the night starts to quiet down a bit, and you would just start to hear this low rumbling, and I don't even know how to describe it other than like a truck idling off in the distance. And that went on we lived there for 2 years, I think.
Not quite 3.
Not quite 3 years. And there was another occasion where we were outside, and I'll let Henri share this with you also. But she kept sensing that something was coming up from behind her.
Yeah, I was standing in front of the house. In fact, we were building a house, and Micah and I had come out to kind of inspect it to see how the building was going. And I was standing in the front yard looking at the house. Mike had gone around to the back. And I was standing in the front yard looking at the house. And all of a sudden, there was this very odd sensation that I had of somebody running up behind me. I had this sense that somebody was actually running, like going to run into me. And so it was such a strong sensation that I turned around and looked, and there was nobody there. There was absolutely no one there. And we also had another time where it was very odd, but there was like this beam of light that just came down and kind of worked its way through the yard, is the only way I can say. It's almost as if there was a giant spotlight, and it was during the day.
Yeah.
But it was like a giant spotlight came along and just kind of worked its way through the yard. It wasn't from the sun, but it was just this very odd beam of light. And then, as I mentioned, there's they call it the land of the double winds, which really, for, I don't know, centuries, it's been called that by the Native Americans here. And so, unfortunately, we had our own experience with the double wind there.
Wow.
And if I can share also, before we go on to the house that we eventually moved into that was haunted, and really, this was really the impetus for us having moved out of this house into the haunted house. But there was a summer afternoon, and I had just left work. It was the early part of July, very, very humid, very, very muggy, and the heat, once again, it's just like almost suffocating. And I had stopped at a local Walmart store to buy some paint.
Yeah.
And I just remember walking out of the air conditioning room into the hot, suffocating air that was that day. And as I was driving home, there was a tornado watch that was broadcast. So I had bought this paint. It was going to be in preparation for the 4th of July. We were going to have some people over. And I was going to spend the next couple of days just prepping the house for those guests that were coming. Well, as I was out in the garage starting to mix the paint and stir the paint, all of a sudden over the radio there was a broadcast of a tornado warning, and they specifically mentioned the area that we were living in. So I ran from the side of the house out of the garage to the front of the house, and sure enough, as I'm looking out across the field, I could see this wall cloud developing really on the horizon. And I sat there and I'm watching this thing start to ratchet down slowly. Well, this house that we had bought and built just 2 years before did not have a basement. So I was of a mind that what I was going to do was build this super strong deck, putting the deck on 16 or 48-inch deep pilings, 12 inches on center, and that you could drive a truck over, with the thought being, since I don't have a basement, if we ever had a tornado, which, keep in mind, were very common in this area, that I was going to get underneath that deck. Well, I decided, as I'm watching this tornado approach, okay, now's the time for me to go and get under the deck. As I started around the side of the house, I heard this little internal voice very, very clearly say, "It's not safe. It is not safe." And I stopped, and I kind of just, I looked around like, why am I hearing this? And I just kind of, I looked over my shoulder again. I could see this tornado, now, not right upon me, but very close. And I said, I've got to get secure under that deck. And I started to take another 2 steps. And it was now I heard an audible voice. And keep in mind, there's no one around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this audible voice, "It's not safe." And now it's like someone has their forearm up against my chest, preventing me from moving forward. And I didn't even have time to question what was going on. I took the hint, and I realized it wasn't safe. And I had a neighbor that was about 600 feet away that he had previously offered, if we ever had a tornado, that I could use his basement. So I ran to his house, and they weren't even aware that the storm was approaching. And I pointed out the window. They saw it, and we all ran downstairs. And probably within 30 seconds of us all going downstairs, the tornado, you could hear it actually hit my house. As a matter of fact, you could hear the roof trying to lift off the home that we were in. So that was also, and like I say, it was the impetus for us moving into this. Rather than rebuild back in that location, we decided to move to another home.
I can understand that. And then after the hurricane had passed and everything else, was there a lot of damage to your house, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the house for the most part was. In the part of the story I didn't tell you what happened. The garage was completely destroyed, and as we came out of the basement of the house, everything just looked out of place. It's hard to describe the feeling, but you could just tell nothing was the same. And the garage was completely ripped from the foundation and thrown into the backyard, as well as, and here's the breathtaking part, is that the deck that I was going to crawl under had been sheared off. The house was lifted off the foundation about 2 or 3 inches and rotated. When it rotated, it sheared the deck off, and the house landed right where the deck was that I was about to crawl under.
So whoever's voice it was obviously saved your life that day.
That little inner voice certainly saved my life.
Do you reckon that could have been like a guardian angel? Because I'm a believer in the guardian angels. I must admit.
Yeah, I believe that it was a guardian angel, because he would have been killed otherwise. I mean, it was quite incredible, because when Mike called me when I was at work and said the house was destroyed, and so I drove home. Of course, it was a horrible drive home. There were trees down and electrical lines down. It was a kind of a little bit of a nightmare. And when I got there, I saw this deck that Mike had so carefully built, and the concrete that he had poured into the ground to keep the deck in place had pulled out all of these. I don't know how many different.
Oh, there's 12, 16 pilings.
12 or 16 pilings that were pulled out of the ground, and they just looked like giant concrete carrots kind of laying all over the backyard. And he would most have assuredly been killed if he would have gotten underneath that.
I just can't. I can't even put myself in that position, because obviously the UK is a bit different than over there in Virginia, Hawaii, and it's just like I can't comprehend what he must have been going through at the time. But incredible that a small voice like that can appear from nowhere, or you can hear it from nowhere, and saves. That's what I'm trying to think of. Is it saved your life that day?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's Henri's often said that when she passes from this earth, that the first person she wants to meet is my guardian angel, because he's got that guardian angel certainly must be worn out.
He's probably got his head in his hands thinking no more.
Kind of continue the story, then we went back and forth. I drew up new plans for the house at that location, and the more we got talking about it, the less sense it made, because it was a rather remote location from where we both worked at the time. So we went out, and this this is kind of like before really the internet days, and we would go to the local grocery store, and the realtors would have all their brochures, and we'd get 2 of each, and then we took them all home or to the apartment we were staying in then, and we started looking through at houses that we might want to consider buying. And it was 2:00 one evening, and we were both tired, and we'd been drinking coffee and talking about and sharing pictures of homes that we had saw in the brochures. And then I told Henry, I said, look, I said, I found one I really, really like. I think I'm interested in. And she said, I just found one. I said, well, why don't you dog your page? I'll dog your mine. We'll look at them in the morning. Well, as it turned out, next morning at breakfast, when we pulled out those brochures, I pulled mine out, she pulled hers out, and it was the same identical house.
Wow.
The night before, we both were looking, before we went to bed, the same house that we would eventually move into and would turn out to be the haunted house.
It's strange, isn't it? When you do something like that, I mean, it's meant to be.
Yes.
I'm not a believer in coincidences. I think if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and that's how it was. And this house, is this the one which we'll be talking about soon, about the hauntings in it?
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, I was gonna tell you. I think we moved into that house in pretty short order.
Right.
And I know Henry was doing a lot of traveling, and one thing in that house that the previous owner had left for us was a bundle of sage on the mantle.
Oh.
There was no other gift, simply a bundle of sage on the mantle, and we've often talked that maybe that was we should have taken that as a warning about what the things that were to come.
Right.
And the home, interestingly enough, the home, I knew the person who had built the home.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, it was like a 1970s home, and my father had actually worked with the gentleman who had built the home, and unfortunately he had this person who built the home had a tragic accident and had both of his legs amputated. And so in a lot of ways the house was a little bit sad from that sort of incident, but he had built not only the house we lived in, but also the house next door, and that was for his mother-in-law. So I don't know if you're very familiar with a lot of the Midwestern homes here in the United States, but it was a very plain ranch-style home, single story, did have a basement this time. Mike insisted on a basement after that last experience. And so when we first moved in, it was the 70s house, and so it needed a lot of renovation. So one of the things Mike started doing was to go ahead and start doing a tremendous amount of renovation, which I don't know if that had anything to do with some of the activity that started to occur, but we did certainly start to experience some activity.
Yeah, and the house.
And I can still recall I've never been too spooked by much of anything, but I can remember that Henry was traveling, and I was over at that house late. We're still living in the insurance provided apartment. And I was going over in the evenings and starting to do some fix up, paint up things on the house. And I remember it was probably about 11 o'clock at night, and I just got real spooked. I told Henry, I said, I don't know what it is. I said, I just felt like somebody was watching me, and I've never done it before. I just kind of shut things down and got out of the house as quick as I can. So very early on in this house, things did not feel good.
Right, and when you moved in, I mean, going back to when you're talking about when you went in and the sage was there, did that not give you any kind of second thoughts? Did you just think, oh, it's just sage, or were you wondering why it was there?
I didn't think too much about it. I thought it was odd. And I remember my first thought was, gee, it's probably up here. It's about the same color as our mantle. Maybe he left it there for some reason. But like I say, that was before anything really had started happening in the house. And then you start reading about sage and say, gee, it's a smudge stick. It's just to bless the house and
to cleanse it. Yeah.
I thought, well, gee, okay, maybe that's just a kind thing for him to have left us. But then after everything started happening, you realize, I think, that he was trying to do us a favor by leaving something that maybe we can smudge the house and do away with these whatever's evil that's in the house. And I say evil, it didn't necessarily feel evil, and it wasn't like things happened every day. But when they did happen, and they did intensify over the years, it wasn't very pleasant. You knew it was something different. It was something paranormal.
Now, by this time, you've had the sage and everything else. Now you've moved into the house. We go as we go along. Now we now moved into the house. You've settled down and things like that. When did the first experience come along? You know, when you were in the house itself and you were sitting there. What was the first thing that happened that made you realise that the house is haunted?
Well, I tell about the neighbor that came over, and shortly after we moved in.
Yeah, we, as I mentioned, the house next door had been built by the same gentleman who built our home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it wasn't like a lot of property, but we had about 3 acres, and our houses were a little far apart. So we didn't get to know the neighbors really well right off because we didn't see them a lot. But one day, I don't know, probably a few months after we moved in, I noticed that the neighbor lady was in the backyard. And so I was working in the backyard, and we just took a few minutes to talk. I found out that she was a hospice nurse, and she was just a very delightful, friendly person to talk to. And after a few moments, she looked at me and she said, "Have you been experiencing anything unusual in your home?" And I kind of looked at her, and it's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, in our house, she said, "I have to tell you, we hear sounds and we hear voices." And I said, "How long has that gone on?" And she said, "Well, really just the entire time we've lived there." And I think they lived there probably about at least 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is I said, "Well, are you still experiencing those voices?" And she said, one evening, she said, it got so bad. And she said, I actually just got mad. And she said, I finally just shouted. And she said, I told them, this is my home. You need to be quiet. Don't make any more sounds anymore. Mm-hmm. And she said after that point in time, she said she didn't hear any more voices after that. Now, I will tell you that later on, and I'll let Mike talk about when things started to intensify for us, but I will also tell you that those neighbors moved away not too long after that, and some new neighbors moved in, and this was a married couple. I don't know, maybe a few months after they moved in, Mike and I were in the office. We spent a lot of time in one of the bedrooms. We converted into an office because I was working on my doctorate, and so I spent a lot of time online and doing research, and so we were in this office a lot. And so one evening, we were actually sitting in this office, and there was a knock on the window, which was very odd. And it was these neighbors, and they're married, they're adults, they're probably in their late 30s, early 40s. And they actually came up to the window and said, "Can we talk to you?" And they sounded like frightened children. And we said, "Well, absolutely." And we invited them in, and they started telling the story. They said that we have been experiencing these terrible things in the house. We're hearing lots of sounds. She said, in our living room, we're starting to experience these very odd, they were actually some sort of like almost manifestations. And how did she describe it, Mike?
Yeah, the way she described it, and keep in mind the interesting thing, these homes were built by the same person. But she sat there in great detail describing how they were sitting in their living room, and she said, I don't know how to describe it. She said it almost looked biblical. She said, I saw this spiral of what looked like flames or light on her ceiling, and she said it spiraled down like to the floor of their living room, and they were absolutely petrified, and I think they ran out of the house to come see us after that had happened. Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing is, in this room that we were in, we had begun to hear shortly after moving in, and really I noticed that after we had done the remodeling and the renovations, and we would sit there at night, and I was always kind of the night owl, and you would hear like and the only way I can describe is like rustling of paper. And then you would hear like these little whispers in your ear, like a radio was on in the background, but you couldn't understand what the voices were saying. And that was really the beginning of when we started experiencing anything in the house. And it was the whispering, this crumpling of paper, hearing what sounded like a book being moved and set down. Mm-hmm. And it literally was like inches away from you, but you would look around the room and nothing was out of place.
And I was traveling quite a bit back then, and I came home from one trip, and I went into the office, and Mike had taken like a blanket and stuffed it around the window, and I said, "What on earth is this?" And he said, and that's when he told me, I'm hearing sounds in here. And of course, that's not something you expect your husband to say.
No.
And I said, well, that's odd. Well, it wasn't, I don't know, maybe a month later, I was in that room by myself, and I heard the same thing. It was like somebody was talking in the background, and then it sounded like there was some sort of like paper being rustled, but there was nobody in there but me.
So it was the same kind of sound as Mike was listening.
We were in that office quite a bit, and Mike can kind of tell you now what really kind of set things off.
And everything kind of started accelerating, and Henry and I are both big. I think Henry said she was working on her doctorate, mm-hmm. So she was spending a little bit more later hours up with me, being the night owl. And then on the weekends, even later, she would sit there and research. We'd have the radio on, and we would listen to, and I'm not sure if you ever heard of this song, named Art Bell from Coast to Coast AM.
Yeah, yep.
And he had an all-night radio talk show, and he would talk about the paranormal and ghosts and Area 51, and really had quite a following here in the States, and I think worldwide. I'm not sure if you ever heard of him or not. He had a guest on that night, and it was a guy named Father Malachi Martin. And Father Martin was a retired Jesuit priest for the Catholic Church. And he performed several exorcisms. And he and Art Bell were talking on the radio. Tammy's studying, I'm listening to the radio, I'm fiddling around on the computer. And Art Bell interrupted him, and he said, well, let me ask you a question. He said, I've had guests on the show before, mm-hmm. and much like this podcast. And he said, is there any danger, he said, to us even discussing these things? Because Father Martin was talking about how the devil was being such a trickster. He said, you open doors when you don't know you're opening doors, playing with a Ouija board. He said, that can open doors. He said, I remember him saying, he said, Art, he said, I do have a fear that doors can be opened even by telling these stories over your airways. Well, it was almost on cue. We had two cats that were in the room with us, and they were sitting by the heater, and almost on cue, we heard what sounded like this, if you can imagine, like a very, very, very large bird trapped in a closet and trying to flap its way out somehow. You heard scratching, you heard clawing, and even the door itself was moving.
It was a bifold.
It was a bifold, just an old closet door that I had cleaned out because I was going to put my computer and a small desk in there. And because as Henry was spreading her paperwork out, I didn't have room anymore in that room. So I was going to make a little area so we could continue to be together into that closet. So I just freshly painted it, and we just put new carpeting down in that room. Everything was pristine, but then all of a sudden we heard this horrendous racket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was the sound, like Mike was saying, was like of a large bird, because it was like a scratching, a clawing, and the sound was about, I would say, probably at chest or shoulder level, so it's not like it was on the ground. And so honestly, we just kind of froze and looked at each other, and it was like, what on earth is this? we had a cat. One of the cats was in the room and ran out. The other cat actually stopped and kind of stared at the closet. And so I looked at Mike looked at me, and so he, being the braver one of the two of us, said, okay, I'm going to open up the closet door. And so meanwhile, the entire time, and I'm probably talking maybe 30, 45 seconds. This wasn't like something that happened like in a moment or two and it was gone. This lasted for a while. And so he went over to the bifold doors on the closet, and then he took them and then quickly pulled them apart. When we're expecting like a bird, some bird to fly,
or an animal. I thought maybe like a raccoon or a squirrel or something was trapped in that room.
And when he opened it up, there was absolutely nothing, and the sound stopped. And there was nothing. And when I say there's nothing in the closet, we had completely cleaned that closet out. There wasn't like a rod. There weren't no clothes. It was an empty space, completely empty space that had been freshly painted and new carpeting put down with no holes, no way to enter or exit except through that bifold door that Mike had opened.
Yeah, I actually later, because I looked around just fully expecting somehow something got into this closet. And later, I think it was the next day, I even pulled back the carpet to see if somehow something had chewed through the floor or chewed through, something that I couldn't see. Yeah. And there was literally nothing that was no way for anything that could have accessed that small closet. So that was probably the start of the really kind of scary stuff that happened in that house.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the scratching and everything else, that's like I don't know whether you've seen the films, the likes of, what was it called? The Exorcist and things like that, with the scratching in the walls and things like that. And it's like, it's kind of demonic in a way. And do you think that was a demonic kind of...
What I would consider some demonic elements to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's interesting is on that same end of the house, and I don't know, I'm not sure what the time frame is. It could have been a couple of weeks. It could have been a month.
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, once again, I've always prefaced the fact that I've always been kind of a night owl. And Henri had gone to sleep and gone to bed. And I stayed out in the living room, which was down the hall from this room that we were just describing.
Yeah.
And I'm watching television, and I'll let Henri take off from there.
I had gone to bed like what Mike had said, and I just laid down. I was not asleep. I had not closed my eyes to sleep. I just literally laid down. I had the door shut to the bedroom because I wanted it to be dark. I like to sleep in a dark room.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was as I had my head laying on the pillow, I heard Mike's voice whisper my name right in my ear. It was his voice. And I sat straight up, and then I heard it again, right in my ear. And I was so terrified, I jumped up, I ran out of the room, and literally down the hall, really kind of screaming, asking Mike if he had called my name. And he said no. And I have to say, it was absolutely terrifying to hear that and to hear that voice in my ear.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhat rather disturbing that the voice you heard was mine.
Yeah, it was
I have no explanation.
It was
for that at all, or how my voice could have manifested itself in her ear.
It was kind of a mimic.
It makes you question yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But
it sounded like him. It sounded exactly like Mike right there with him.
So it was mimicking your voices as well, which is not a good sign, is it really? I mean, that's in my own personal view, it's like kind of a demonic. It was what was in there. And going on further, after all, you've had this, you've had the scratching, you've had everything else. Did it escalate? Did it get worse, or was it just like
It did. And like I say, you have to. We fielded a lot of questions over the years, and we shared this story with our friends.
Yeah.
And they've always asked us, how can you possibly live in a house that these things are going on? But it was we lived in that house for 14 years.
Wow.
And you might go months and nothing would happen, and then all of a sudden something just really bizarre. And another story I'll start, and I'll let Henry finish it. But once again, it was in the bedroom. She got up early one morning to go into the office where we heard the scratching, and she was going to do some early research, and I was going to stay in bed, and I didn't go back to sleep. I grabbed a magazine or a book, I don't recall, and she had shut the door, so all her typing on the keys or whatever she's doing in that room wouldn't disturb me. So I'm lying there reading a book, and all of a sudden I heard 3 tremendously loud knocks on the bedroom door. And I thought, my God, what'd she do? Lock herself out? And why in the dickens is she beating on the door so hard? So
yeah, and meanwhile, I'm in the office working on the computer, and I hear these knocks coming through the bedroom, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, why on earth is Mike knocking on the bedroom door? Why doesn't he just open up the door? Mm-hmm. So I get up from my office desk, and I walk down the short walk down the hallway to the bedroom, and I went to open the door, putting my hand on the doorknob, and when I opened the door, Mike was on the other side, and he said, "Why are you knocking on the door?" And I said, "Well, why are you knocking on the door?" And of course, neither one of us were. I have no idea. The knocking stopped after we both put our hands on the doorknob. It was just very odd and very unusual.
I've got to say, I don't know how you stayed there for 14 years neither, but I'd have been 4 hours and I'd have been gone.
It was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
You had to talk about when we're getting ready to move, all the weird stuff that happened.
I will. And we were this is kind of getting towards the end of the time when we lived in this house. Mm-hmm. Henry was going to be changing jobs. We'd kind of learned to live with the house as it was. But that nothing, the activity tended to seem to pick up a little bit. And like I say, I was retired by this time, and Henry was still working. So I'm the guy I'm Mr. Mom. I'm going to make all the dinners and prepare dinner for every night. Well, we had this basement, and we had our pantry. Nice, dry, very clean basement. Mm-hmm. And the only thing we had down there was this shelves for the canned goods that we kept. So I went downstairs like I had done almost every day for quite some time to get our canned goods to start making dinner. And as I picked up the cans and started walking and just barely turned, I'm about 3 or 4 feet from the steps. And all of a sudden I heard this low, guttural, growling sound. And it's like everything in your mind, and even as I tell you the story, the hair stands back on my neck or up on my neck. And I tried to tell myself, well, it must be the cats. I didn't see the cats come down. It must have been the cats came down, and they're starting to fight someplace in the basement. And all the while, I knew that wasn't the case. And so I kind of took some quick steps to start to go up out of the basement. And I think I was 2 or 3 steps up on the stairs. And then the sound that I heard amplified by tenfold, to the point where the growling that I heard was palpable. It almost like it vibrated my chest. And I immediately bolted up the steps, and seeing what I knew was true, I saw both of my cats sunning themselves on the kitchen floor upstairs. Mm-hmm. And that occurrence frightened me to the point where, like I said, we're preparing to move. I did not even tell Henry about that occurrence until after we moved out of the house.
Right, and you mentioned that you had cats there as well, and as you know, you're both probably aware that animals are quite sensitive. Did the cats sense anything around?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Not on that growling, but the incident with the clawing and scratching in the garage. We had one cat, and typically the coward that he was, he ran out of the room. But our little female cat, Scraps, who went through the tornado with me, when she heard that noise in the closet, she ran right over to it. She responded immediately to what she knew was a disturbance in that closet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also very typical of the cats to be in the living room looking down the hallway towards the office, and for them to stare and hiss looking down the hallway.
Yeah.
And that always unnerved me quite a bit, because I often wondered what on earth are they sensing or seeing that makes them do that.
Well,
and I just shared, while we're kind of collecting all these stories,
mm-hmm.
I shared with Henri that that I was sitting in the living room, and it was right adjacent to the foyer, which was right adjacent to the hallway that went back to the back of the house where the bedrooms were. And the cats would stand in the foyer and look down that hallway and growl and hiss. And I remember one time that I was looking, I thought, well, what are they doing? And you got to be careful so your imagination doesn't run with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember one time I'm looking down the hall, and I've got the light that's in the corner of the living room kind of in my face, so I can't clearly see what's in the hall. But I saw what looked to be like a dark shadow move down the hall. Now, I didn't make I wasn't overly concerned about that, because I thought, well, maybe my eyes are playing tricks. But when you put together that the cat had just been looking down the hallway growling,
mm-hmm.
maybe I caught just a very little bit of a glimpse of what they were looking at. I to this day, I just don't know.
No, and you were just saying, I mean, right at the beginning of the show when we went to, you both said about that in your previous houses before you met. You both had like experiences with shadows, and it seems to have come to this one as well. So, maybe the way I think is has that come with you? From your childhood and things like that.
Well, the interesting thing is we had moved in from that house in Fairborn. We moved out of that home and transferred to Leesburg, Virginia. Mm-hmm. In a house that we found to be very, very, very quiet. We often mention
wonderfully so.
Wonderfully,
Mm-hmm.
that's right. No experiences whatsoever, other than we did not bring our little tornado cat Scraps with us. She
mm-hmm.
was about 13, 14 years old and very, very sick. So we had her euthanized before we brought her, which kind of brings me, I almost forgot to mention, another story is after the growling in the basement, and this happened probably a couple days after that.
Mm-hmm.
We were both in the living room. We were both in the living room, and all of a sudden we heard Scraps had a little cage that she liked to sleep in. They gave her a little bit of comfort in the kitchen, and it was a little wire cage, maybe 2.5, 3 feet by maybe 3 feet or something, 4 feet. And she would go in there at night and make that her place to sleep. Well, all of a sudden we heard this cage. The only way I can describe it was a wire stainless steel cage. It sounded like somebody had taken this cage and was just rattling the cage.
Right.
And I jumped off the couch and ran into the kitchen, and I'm watching this pet cage bounce off the floor about 3 or 4 inches off the floor, and it's bouncing in the corner of the kitchen just straight up and down. And the cat, who never before had gotten on top of the cage, was standing on top of the cage, almost trying to balance herself with her legs splayed out. And this, as I'm watching this, I hollered, "You got to come see this!" The cat jumped off of the cage, and it continued to bounce, and even with her not being on it, it continued to bounce for another 10 seconds, straight up and down 3 or 4 inches off the ground or off the surface of the floor. And then as soon as Henri came around the corner, the cage just dropped to the ground.
Right. So, Henri, when you came in and into the kitchen, like Mike said, then it stopped. a lot of the the paranormal stuff happened to Mike, and you come along, or what I'm trying to say is you're a stronger kind of person. The way it's coming through, that it's Mike is more sensitive, and it's picking up on that, or is it just the way it's going? If you understand where I get there.
I don't know on that. It was a very unique experience because it was something so physically oriented. Mike actually saw, physically saw it. I certainly heard it. We'd had the cat for a long time. We'd had the cage for a long time. We'd never heard anything like that. And it's almost like, I think, in a way, I kind of think that the house kind of knew that we were leaving. Obviously we were moving, we're putting things, packing things up. And I honestly think some of the activity increased at that point because we were getting ready to move.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that a lot, don't you? About people either moving in, it happens, or when they're moving out, it's like they don't want you to go, so they're making themselves known.
That's it exactly. And in fact, I know this will sound. I know there's been a lot of odd things we talked about, but something I never have done in my life, either before or since, and probably will never do, I would think, is that before we left this house, Mike and I actually walked around every single room in the house, and we said, and Mike had some holy water from some sort of
Maria Stein.
He'd gone to Maria Stein, a religious place in Ohio, and we purchased some holy water, and we went around, and Mike would sprinkle the holy water. We said goodbye to the house, and we asked the house to be nice to the next owner. And we went around to every single room, and we did that. It was almost like the house was a living entity, and we were going to be saying goodbye to it. And so that's what we did before we left. And like I said, we've lived in houses before that, and we've lived in houses after that, and we have never done that before.
Now, going to the house, I mean, before you moved out, obviously you had, guests staying over and that. Did they experience anything that you were getting in the house?
Well, we never knew the people who moved in the house after us, but unfortunately, the man who purchased the house died several years later and died in the foyer of the house.
Yeah, he actually died of a heart attack right there in the foyer of that home.
It's quite sad news, that one. But I mean, did he live alone? Did this man live alone then?
He did live alone. The gentleman that bought the house, I know he had a girlfriend that would visit him, but he did live alone. And like I say, we found out sometime after his passing that in fact he died in that home. And I've often wondered, and it maybe not fair, but if there's maybe the house wasn't as nice to him as we wanted it to be.
No, I mean, that came across my mind. Was it fear? What caused it, or was it just natural that he had not natural, but he had the heart attack and passed away? There's two ways of looking at that one, and it's sad, but you can't comprehend it again. Like what happened to you with the hurricanes. You can't comprehend. I mean, what did that man go through? I know what you have gone through. As I was saying before, did you have visitors stay, and did they experience anything of a paranormal activity when they were staying with you in the house? And did they let you know?
Well, the interesting thing is we had in Virginia we had purchased two different homes. We lived in one for about 10 years, and really the truly only paranormal thing that happened in that house is, and I can remember talking to Henri, I said, let me ask you a strange question. I said, have you ever seen Scraps, who we didn't bring to that house? Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen Scraps in the house? And I asked her that question because on a couple of occasions I would look down the hallway and I would see little Scraps turn the corner with her tail straight up in the air and disappear into the living room. And
and I saw the same thing. On two separate occasions, I saw that cat. I saw the cat outside in the backyard, and I saw our little cat in the house. And of course, like we said, she unfortunately we had to euthanize her before we moved, and so she was never in that house. But she, at least not physically, she wasn't in the house. But her little spirit seemed to have come. So.
Well, that's a nice thought, that one. I mean, I had a dog called Scooby, and when he passed away, you know, I didn't live in the house I am now. I lived in a place called Highton, and there was a time when you'd be in the kitchen, and my son would say the same, and I'd be washing the dishes, and I'd turn around and I'd go to step over the dog. Now, Scooby passed away quite early, in the August of August 2014 he passed away, and that happened quite often to us. So I mean, you think about humans as spirits, but the animals must come back in the same way because they've got the same souls as us, just in a different kind of form, and it does give you comfort. Like you were saying, then you're seeing the cat. I mean, what seeing my dog gave me comfort. Maybe it was there to give a bit of protection as well.
I think that's true, and what's interesting you say that is the lady that we only knew for a brief period of time that had come over shortly after we moved into that house in Fairborn.
Or the neighbor,
the hospice nurse. She and three of her colleagues had written a book, and they talked about people being visited prior to their death. That some of their pets would actually come visit and see them before they passed. So
right.
I'm a big believer. I think there's a lot of things obviously that happened to us, and I'll share a couple things that's happened in our new home. But certainly, to me, there's things that happen that just can't be explained.
That never will be. It's one of those, isn't it? It's very hard to explain anything. Now, the house you were in Ohio, you had a lot. Over the 14 years you were living there, did anything actually harm you, or was it just physically harm you, or leave you scratches, or was it just like sounds and noises in the walls and things like the scratches you told me about, or did you see anything?
The only time I ever felt physically threatened, and I wasn't, but is when I heard that growling for the second time in the basement. The first time I tried to dismiss it, and then the second time when I heard the growling, I felt physically threatened because, like I say, the growling was palpable. Nothing reached over, nothing touched me. The hair was standing up on the back of my neck, but no, I don't think we were ever touched.
No. No, I'd say the closest for me was just the sound of Mike's voice in my ear. Literally, it sounded like he was just physically right there in bed with me. But nothing touched me. No.
So it was just
nothing.
Yeah. So they were just letting you.
And by the way, the only room in the house that we did not go down and bless when we left was the basement. I'm not too sure that I ever went back into that basement.
Nor would I. That's one thing I wouldn't do. I mean, I'm a paranormal investigator, and there's some places that I just think I won't go. And there's a place, I mean, I don't know whether you've seen it on YouTube, there's a place called Mill Street Barracks, which I'm based in. I'm one of the, I'm on the committee there, and we do a lot of paranormal investigations. I know that building like the back of my hand, and there's one room I will not go in. Not for, I've been offered money to go in there, and I just won't take the risk. I really won't take the risk. Now, you were saying the basement, or as we call them, cellars over here in the UK. In the cellars, it seems that it's a lot of things happen in the cellars, and I don't know why. I can never understand that. Whether it's it's underground and there's ley lines are connected to them and things like that. I don't know. It's very hard to understand.
Well, that was it. I never felt particularly uncomfortable in our basement, but I know Henri said on a number of occasions, she said, I'm not comfortable going down there. She goes, I don't like this basement.
I hated the basement. I always felt like something was watching me when I was in that basement. I just did not. There was nothing It was unfinished. There wasn't anything too descriptive about it. It just had those shelves in it where we kept canned goods at the bottom of the stairway. Well, you know what? I guess the one thing we haven't talked about was our cat that we found.
No, we didn't.
A cat?
Well, you have time for just one more? We have one more story about that basement. I forgot all about
Feel
that.
free, yeah. Yep.
Well, yeah, we had gone on a very short vacation, and we bought the big water bottles, the self-filling water bowls for the cats, and a self-filling food bowl for the cats. So we were gone a few days, and we had was it 2 cats? Or
Yeah. We had 3 cats at the time,
Yeah.
of which one was Mike's favorite, was Harry.
Yes, Henri.
Yeah.
And so when we came home, and we've done this before, we'd gone on short trips and we'd leave the water bowl and the food bowl, and the cats would be absolutely fine. And in this particular occasion, we came home, and the cats, we saw 2 of the cats, and they were just acting real bizarre. I can just only tell you, they were just acting very bizarre. Just very skittish, didn't want to be around us. But the third cat we couldn't find. And as we said, his name was Harry. He was an orange cat. And so
It was unusual for him not to greet me.
he was like,
Because he was like the ultimate lap cat,
and he loved Mike. He absolutely loved Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually were calling for Harry, and we went all around the house, couldn't find him. And so Mike finally went down to the basement, and the cat had died and was underneath the steps of the bottom step of the basement.
What was it, 3 or 4 years old?
Yeah, he was like only a 3 or 4 year old cat.
Oh.
And the other 2 cats were completely
Distraught.
Yeah, they were distraught. They were just completely distraught. So that was another unusual thing in that basement. I just couldn't stand that basement, and I never knew about, as Mike said, I never knew about the growling, but I did not like to go down there because of just the sensations I would have when I would go down those steps.
It's funny how you get them. You get that feeling of it. There's an atmosphere there, and there's a danger. I mean, I'm sorry for the cat. Do you think the cat wandered down there, or do you? I know it's a horrible thing to ask, but do you think something happened to it? While you went in the house. Sounds strange, but paranormal wise.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to it down there in the basement, because it was a fine cat. I mean, it was only 3 or 4 years old and very healthy. So we have no idea what happened to it down in that basement and how it got underneath the bottom of the step. I don't know.
And with the other cats being distraught as well, it brings it, to that area of demonic. Could it be demonic again?
I tell you, I don't know. There was something different about the basement.
Yeah.
And kind of to wrap things up here, we had the 2 homes in Leesburg that were absolutely, except for seeing scraps, pretty quiet homes. And then we recently moved into a house that's on the side of a mountain, and there was a crash some years ago.
Right.
And a plane crash some years ago, and 95 people lost their lives. They literally perished instantly. And when I shared this story with my son, he said, "Well, maybe you should not build or buy a home there."
Yeah.
And in my thinking, the crash actually happened on the lot next to us. And as it turned out, looking at old photographs of the crash site, some of that crash occurred on this property. And after having lived in 2 very, very quiet homes, we've had a couple of experiences in this home already, and nothing demonic, but we have heard footsteps and even voices and experience in music. It's like an Indian flute. It's hard to describe.
Is this in the house you're in now, Mike?
And then one thing that's probably the most disturbing for me is something in will keep tapping me on my foot or my leg at night.
Yeah.
So we've only been here at this house a year, but it certainly is not as active as the house we had in Fairborn. but it's not as quiet as the houses that we owned in Leesburg.
Right, and going to just ask before we finish, is the house you're in now and the one in Ohio, is it, you say it's much calmer and it's much more relaxed and everything else. Obviously you're going to be happy about that, but how do you feel about it being, there's been a crash site there as well? Do you think that these things are happening because of the crash, or
we had a neighbor that who's lived here for the last 5 years in this neighborhood, and I'll let you share it. She spoke of seeing things.
There was a neighbor that we had that she said that she'd seen at one point when she lived here, she actually saw like a black fog that came in from the bottom of the mountain all the way to the top.
Yeah.
And so felt that, and they had also spoken to some loggers who had used to log this part of the mountain, and they said that they felt that the loggers said that they felt that the mountain itself was haunted. Now I can't tell you any more than that, because I can tell you I have heard the voices, I've heard the footsteps, I've heard this this music that sounds like Native American flute music. It's just bizarre because it sounds like somebody's like almost right in the room with you when the sound starts. And I know that Mike has told me about the tapping on his foot and legs at night after it's happened, and thankfully it hasn't happened to me. But so I don't know. It just kind of remains to be seen. I don't know why we're experiencing these things, but and hopefully it doesn't go where it did with the other house. But certainly there are some things that are occurring here that are a bit out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm. And are you glad to be away from the house? The other house. Are you glad to have been away from that one, or would you like to go back to it and see what experiences the people who live there now?
No, I wouldn't want to be back there. No, I have to tell you, it was so creepy to be there. But fortunately, I was not there by myself very often because I was typically the one traveling a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a place that you could just really relax in totally. So yeah, I'm happy to be away. It was a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
But I really wouldn't want to do that again.
And yourself, Mike, are you the same?
I like where we live now.
To be honest with you, it sounds a beautiful place where you live now, over in the mountains. I know a sad incident's happened there, but yeah, it sounds absolutely stunning over there. I'm stuck on a housing estate in St. Helens. No views apart from out the windows, a couple of things out the windows. Now, the both of you yourselves, now, I know when we were arranging this interview with you, you were saying that you're considering bringing out a book. Have you started to write the book at all?
I'm sorry, you cut out right then. Can you repeat that, please?
Oh, sorry. You were thinking about writing a book, or when I was talking to you, because we were talking about last week when you were interviewing you.
Kind of collected several of these stories, and I've shared some on one of the paranormal websites.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of toying. It's called The Paranormal Life of an Average American Couple, which really depicts. We hope to maybe have this thing wrapped up. We've been, like I said, we've been working on it for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But we hope to have this thing wrapped up and get it published. If not by the end of this year, certainly soon thereafter.
That'd be fun. I'd love to read it. What I'll do, Mike, is I'll keep in touch with you anyway and see how you're getting on. And if you'd like to, we'd like to bring you back on again. In a couple of months' time, if that's okay with you.
No, absolutely.
Oh, we'd love that. Yeah.
Because it's been. Hopefully,
we won't have any news stories to report.
I was hoping you would. It's a paranormal station. We need the stories. But no.
Yeah, I have one that I'll share with you in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about my sister who was. She actually had an experience of her own, so I'll share that with you at a future date.
Yeah, Mike has had a lot of other experiences beyond the house, so I'm sure that he would have a lot of other interesting things to talk about. That
would be fantastic, because it's been interesting listening to what you've been through. If I'd have been through that, I wouldn't have been in that house more than 4 hours, never mind 14 years. Well, you're very brave people, and so are your cats as well, to be honest with you. But I'd like to thank you both for taking time out, because there's a big of a time lapse between us here, and I'd love to thank you so much for giving your time to tell us your stories and how what you've experienced over the years. And I'm looking forward to having you both back on the show again, Henry and Mike. It's been really, really good to have you on.
All right.
Thank you.
Well,
We really appreciate it. Thank you for having us. It really meant a lot to us. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
We wish you and your podcast listeners well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We definitely will keep in touch, and I look forward to having you on again. So, Mike and Henry over in Virginia, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, I got it right, because when I was organising, I was saying Ohio all the time. Thank you again for coming on the show, and definitely keep in touch, and thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Good
Take
night.
care.
And you take care too. Thank you. How interesting was that, Jonathan?
Absolutely intrigued.
And do you know what? I'm not going to make any excuses, because I left it on for the full hour. I think it was about an hour and 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Because we did suggest about splitting it into two, didn't we? We were going to
We
put
did.
half an hour of it the first half, another half an hour of the second half. But because it went so well, the interview,
Oh, no.
we decided, that we can't. We've got to leave it as one show.
Yeah.
I mean, in the future, some of the interviews we got coming up, we are going to split them into two halves.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
they fed off each other so well, and the stories were so
I know.
good.
It was hard to get a word in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
With us two, that's incredible.
I know. That's brilliant. The apps, do you know what? The stories, them houses.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, amazed.
yeah. I mean, sad about the cat as well.
Yeah.
The cat passing
Yeah,
away there in the cellar.
Yeah.
And also, they stayed in that house in Ohio for 14 years. 14 years.
14
Like
minutes.
I said to them, 4 hours.
14 minutes.
14 minutes, yeah.
Years.
Maybe we just suddenly gone through the door, but I mean, if they write a book, I definitely want to read it, because they've had so many things happening from when they were children right the way through each house they've been to.
Yeah.
From shadow people
I know.
to, I don't know.
Voices and demonic.
And then the people who, it was interesting that they went to the people next door, and they knew about it.
I know.
What I would have done, I would have researched it, because they said it was the land of the Indians, wasn't it?
It wasn't the
a reservation
houses were built
on
and they
an
were
old
built by
reservation.
the same
Yeah.
person, weren't
Yeah.
they?
And so
The
that
person lived in the house as well.
And where they had the door knocking, something banging on the door, and Henry was at one end of the building, and Mike was at the other end, and they both thought it was each other.
That's right.
As soon as that happened, I'd have been going, I'm just going to go and see me mum, or I'm just nipping down the road, I'll see you tomorrow sometime.
I know.
It's like, but I mean, I would have had EVPs. I would have put my EVPs out and that. I'd have had a paranormal group. That's one thing we never asked them. Did they have any groups investigate it?
Yeah, well, maybe when they come back on.
Yeah, because they were definitely getting them back on again. Yeah.
In a while.
Then
we could ask them about that, couldn't we?
The other one was the building near the mountain where the plane crashed.
I know, yeah. Do you know what, Jamie?
They've got such an interesting life, some people, haven't they?
Haven't they just?
And they were lovely people as well.
He was lucky with the tornado, wasn't he? When he went
Don't
to
even
go
go
onto
there.
the deck that he built.
Yeah,
And
I mean, once that voice. Yeah.
I mean, he built it. He knew how strong it was. And he got a voice telling them not to.
I know. I'd have listened to that as well.
So would I. I'm glad he did.
All I could think of, though, is, when he was telling me, was The Wizard of Oz.
Dorothy.
Yeah. Did you think the same?
I did. In a good way.
I know his Mike telling us dead seriously, and I'm thinking it sounded like The Wizard of Oz.
No, it did. The tornado.
I think it wasn't being disrespect. I think it was because when he was explaining it, you can picture that tornado as in The Wizard of Oz, grabbing the out, away you go.
Well, we don't really get them, do we?
No.
So, I mean, like Mike said over there, it's a very common thing.
I know.
So, I mean, for us,
it's not.
It's not. We never really. I don't think I've ever seen one.
No.
I think we've had a couple of little tiny ones, but nothing
Yeah.
they get over there.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen videos of little tiny ones over here,
So
but
the first thing you think about is when people talk like that about it,
I know.
ripping the houses and deck up and all the rest of it. There was. It's Dorothy.
And how lucky was Mike though
I know.
to
Very
get
lucky.
into his next door neighbour's safety zone in the
yeah.
basement.
Yeah,
Very, very lucky. He's
Yeah.
had a few close misses,
I know.
you know. And then he goes and moves into a house where a plane crashed it into the mountain.
I know. I don't know whether it's followed them and it's attached to them, but they said it.
No, the plane was
wasn't.
before they got there,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it didn't follow them.
No.
Sorry, Jonathan. Sorry, Mike. But
No,
yeah.
it's just it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? And he said they said they don't think anything's actually attached to them, but
No,
it certainly followed them round.
I know. And do you know what? When they were explaining the stories to them, you could feel the enthusiasm of when he was on, because, like you said,
Yeah.
we couldn't get a word in, which is fantastic.
No, it's good.
I was really pleased because they told the stories. Each
Yeah.
one of them was an individual story, and
Yeah.
you know, you listen to someone's life and you're thinking, "Oh my word!"
I know.
You
I
know,
what a life they've had.
yeah, what an incredible life they've had, and the experience of the paranormal. When you listen to these paranormal experiences, like what Mike and Henry had there, you can't comprehend what it was like.
You can't. It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
exactly. That. Yeah, it is like the Amityville.
Yeah.
Things like that,
so,
yeah. That was like not on the same par as the Amityville, but you
No,
can
but-
imagine what they've been through. And I mean, obviously they couldn't
Yeah.
tell us every story,
No,
but you could imagine that turning into like a movie.
I know. You could, couldn't you?
Yeah, and that's what I was
really could.
picturing. And when they were telling us it, I mean, if they wrote it as a story, they'd have a bestseller.
They would. They really would. And
Yeah.
the thing is, Jamie, he's got lots more stories as well.
I know. And when he comes back, it'll be great.
Yeah. Can't
And
wait.
yeah, I was so pleased to they came on, and what lovely people as well.
Aren't they?
Yeah,
Aren't they?
so pleasant and so willing to tell the stories.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, as you heard, then they're on about making a book, writing a book near the end of the year. And do you know what? I don't blame them.
I don't say that.
Because-
So they should.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely read it
I would.
because I don't know what the listeners thought, and that's why I didn't cut it into 2 hours, because it just flowed so well. We just thought to ourselves, let's just put it on as one big piece.
Yeah.
One.
Why not?
Everyone got a really good story, and 2, they didn't have to listen to us.
Up to you.
There's no need for that, Jonathan. Yeah, my next new co-presenter is going to be.
And on that note,
yeah. What do you mean on that note?
if anyone's got any stories, Jamie's going to tell you the email.
Not yet.
all
I'm
the
not. I haven't got
details.
it up on the screen. Oh, you are so cool. You done that on purpose, didn't you?
Yeah.
I can't even find the link or anything.
Oh, come on.
Well, we've got
Caught
the
you out
YouTube.
there, didn't I?
Well, the
Aye.
YouTube channel is going fantastic.
It is.
We're starting to get there now. We're starting to put some stuff up there, and if you want to listen to the shows, go to it. Go to the YouTube
Yeah.
channel, Access Paranormal at Access Paranormal Radio Podcast. And I think, are you going to tell them the links, or have I got to do it? Because I can't find them anywhere.
There we go,
He's
Jamie.
been really cruel to me now.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I'm clicking. You can probably hear me clicking away in the background trying to find the information.
Right, I'll find it another way.
Yeah. How unprofessional do we sound at this moment in
I
time?
know. Trying to catch it out there.
Yeah,
Caught
well.
myself out as well. Right, so have you got any stories, like you
Yeah.
said,
Go on then, you do
any
it, John.
experiences
this
you want
week.
to come on the show, then you can email us at info.accessparanormal@gmail.com. You can get us on Facebook, Access Paranormal 01.
You couldn't remember it then, could you?
You can get us on Twitter at Access Paranorm 1, and then you can get us on Instagram at Access Paranormal Radio Podcast. And don't forget to go like and subscribe to our YouTube videos, which are all the shows. There's more coming soon, and that is Access Paranormal Radio Podcast.
And if there's any paranormal groups out there or any individuals who want to contact us and come on the show, please get in touch with us. We'd love to have you on the show. That would be great. We'd love to, to hear your stories. It doesn't matter which part of the world you come from. We'd love to hear from you and hear your stories. I know there's not going to be a lot from 2020 because we've all been in this lockdown situation. But if you have been out and about and you've done some walking and done some investigations in safety, we'd love to hear from them. And even if you want to come on and talk about old investigations you've done, that would be great as well. I'd quite enjoy that.
Yeah, it'd be good, wouldn't it?
We just want to hear from you. Yeah, not that we're lonely, not that we're not hearing from you.
No.
But, we'd love to. Please get in touch.
Yeah.
What was the email address again?
The email address is info.accessparanormal at gmail.com.
You forgot it then, didn't you? You were just trying. Do you know what? You can't see what I'm seeing, but he's getting his phone out of his pocket to try and find the email address. Yeah, do you know what? We need to revise these because every week we did. Yeah, yeah. Please, you can catch us on Facebook as well.
Yeah,
there's our page, Access Paranormal Radio Podcast, on there as well.
Yeah. So sends a message on Facebook or Instagram or sends an email.
And John has a scan around anyway, so we might get in touch with yous.
Yeah. So if you get a message off us, don't be afraid, answer it, and we'll get you on the show. Yeah,
that would. Do you know what? The more, the merrier.
More, the merrier. Love it. Is right.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for, isn't it? And then people can listen to it.
Yeah. And I'm gonna stop you talking now because we've got to finish.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that time of the night where we've got to say goodbye. So for anybody listening out there, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us. And don't forget, you can hear this again soon on YouTube. And I'd like to thank Jonathan for coming in again.
You're welcome, Jamie.
And we'll be back here next week, won't we? So everybody out there, please stay safe. Don't do anything silly, and we can get out there paranormal investigating again. So from me and Jonathan, good night. See you soon.